Good afternoon. It is an honor to be here, and and just a great opportunity for us at Calvert to discuss about our company. And I think Jessica is really the smart one. I am not the very smartest person in the room, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a quick background and history. Calvert came out of a professional service firm that had been very focused on emerging markets. Those emerging markets were somewhere around Africa, South Africa, looking at Ghana, Equatorial Guinea, Congo, Angola, and really looking at doing a lot more services and legal business advisory services. But then as we grew, we saw that big opportunity to be able to raise capital, expand, and go into other markets that we saw as going to be very lucrative for the future. A lot had gone in with the energy business, where energy was going to drive Africa. When you look at energy poverty with 600 million people without electricity, then you start to really pay attention to see that whatever you do providing services, this booming energy sector, be it natural gas, be it hydrogen, or other renewables, our clean tech, that is really going to drive, and being able to be in a play to drive that partially as a service provider, but also as an investor in Germany was very interesting for us. I think my background, first of all, being German and also being somebody who grew up in that country, realized that there is also that big opportunity of connecting EU markets and Africa and really being able to build a robust company that address those issues. And it's been a very great run. We enjoying it. We've seen some challenges, but I think through COVID and then coming out of COVID, but we've been very hopeful, given the opportunities that we see, what we see coming, and also looking at potential acquisitions of new companies that are like Sustain, that are going to do a lot more around renewables, a lot more companies that are going to do work within these ESG guiding principles that we think would really shape markets as it goes. So that, but also having big clientele that you want to expand services with them through CLG or one of our brands, and really being able to grow that, it's really going to do that. I'll stop here and I'll let Jessica continue with the presentation while but it'll be available to answer any questions in the near future.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. So I'm getting now a little bit more into the technical details of the company. And first of all, I mean, you've already met NJ. He's our CEO and founder of the holding company of Calvert. It's Sebastian Wagner. He's our executive board member, and myself, I'm handling all the investor relations. But we also work closely with our portfolio companies and partners from CLG, our service provider that NJ already mentioned, and also other companies that are active in the African energy sector and are expert in the field. And so what we see ourselves as a really unique player in the, especially in the German market. And on the one hand, we have like a really strong management and unmatched network, as NJ also mentioned before we started, as a service provider, which means that we had, through this work as a consulting firm, we had the opportunity to grow our network, to gain a powerful network within the African energy sector, and have a strong relationship with major industry players, from private but also with government figures. And this is really important for us to grow the company. Also, what we think is really special for us as a holding company is that we're looking really at high margin businesses. So we're focusing on cash generating companies. We try to avoid investing into really greenfield projects, because we want to have a sustained growth and long-term stability for the holding company as well, and stable growth. And within these businesses, we also want to create like a high synergy creation. So, which means we want that our existing portfolio companies are working closely together, that there's like that they can enable rapid growth within each other and create a strong value and that they work together, and we see not each portfolio company as their own, but we see it as a whole conglomerate. And also we see what we think is really special about Calvert is that we're like a safe entry into the African market, which means we're like a listed company at the German Stock Exchange. And we follow the German compliance rules, but we also are active in emerging markets. So we are like a safe way to tap into these markets, which we are aware that are sometimes a little bit difficult to enter by reducing risk by being a German company, a German listed company. So we see ourselves like as the entry into Africa. And yeah, here is a short overview about our company ourselves to make it a little bit more clear how our current business model is. And as NJ already mentioned, we started as a law and consulting firm, which is here CLG, you can see here. So we have two pillars of investments right now. So on the one, it's like advisory and promotion, and the other one is investment operation. So with advisory and promotion, as mentioned before, it's CLG, our law and consulting firm, which focused on energy sector in Africa, but also we see high potential within the conferencing sector. There we also see, especially when we were talking about the synergy creation, we see high synergies between the advisory business and the conferencing business. On the other side, we have the investment operation business. Here we're looking a little bit more into the energy technologies, which means we're looking into off-grid energy solutions such as solar, biomass, but also hydrogen. We know that it's still greenfield, but here we see the possibility, especially when we're working closely with the African governments, we see here a big potential and also big governmental support. But also what we see is really interesting is like the carbon capture business and the recycling industry, which also match well with our existing portfolios. And so when we look at our figures, we are currently at an equity value of 3 million USD, and we're listed in Germany, as mentioned before, in Düsseldorf, and we require an investment of 20 million USD. We are aware that it's like a big gap between our equity value. We have a lot of ambitions, but I think we will get into it later, what kind of deal pipeline we have, and which brings you a little bit more of a story behind these numbers. And regarding our shareholder structure, right now the majority is owned by the management, and we have only a free float of 10%. And I will get back to it a little bit later that we're willing to change these structures. And yes. So just a little bit tapping into our existing portfolio, so if you've got a little bit better overview. So we are 100% owner of CLG. That's the advisory firm that we were talking before. So they're providing professional advisory service on high-value projects across the continent. And we also hold 100% of Emerging Energy Corporation. They're a project developer. They are focusing on the hydrogen projects in Namibia. And as well, we have a minority share in the Sustain Energy Group. They're a South African-based clean energy technology provider, which are providing off-grid solutions like solar, biomass, biogas, but also energy storage systems. And yes, so while we are here, so we want to tap on this a little bit more in detail. So on the one hand, we're looking here for a strategic investor. So which means we want someone who shares the vision that we have, that especially NJ also mentioned. We see the potential in Africa. We see the potential of the energy sector, which is a base of the industrialization of Africa, and we want to have someone who wants to join this journey with us and share the vision, and who's interested into either energy or Africa, or even we don't need to be that big of an expert, but someone who has passion about this topic. And which also means, we mentioned before, that we have a the management owns the majority of the company, but where the management is open to dilute their shares to align interest with a potential investor. So we are very open to that. And also, which is important for us, we don't want to have an investor who's just handing money and that's it. We want to have like a collaborative relationship. We want to work together and we want to have mutual growth. And I think growing is our biggest ambition for Calvert. And when we look on the other side, when we look how we want to invest, how we want to expand our portfolio, I think our biggest motto is the acquisitive growth, which means so we want to acquire new companies and we want to have companies that align with our long-term vision, which means we want to expand, for example, our geographic footprints, maybe in countries in Africa that we haven't been that active yet, but also we're interested maybe tapping into the German or in general European market to enhance this exchange of German, Europe, Africa. And which is also important for us. We want to invest in companies that already have like a strong reputations, already have like a network that we can use. So that's for us really important when we want to acquire new companies. And also, which is important for us, that it's like already a company that can show revenue, that has a scalable business, and also strong EBITDA margin, but it also has a sustainable growth. So for us, it is important that we get something back out of the company, and we don't want to have several investment rounds, for example, into a startup, and we're not sure if we get any money back. So these are our investment missions for Calvert. And yeah, now I'm getting a little bit more in detail about our deal pipeline that we actually have. So for CLG, our advisory business, we have 2 deals right now, Project Lagos and Project Kigali, we called them. So here with CLG, our vision is especially the acquisitive growth, because we tried or we wanted to, for example, tap into the German market, but we are aware that the advisory business is a little bit like a red ocean. We know that it's that there are like a lot of competitors, so that's why we thought the most successful way to really establish a brand in outside of Africa is to acquire a company that already has built a reputation in the market, for example, in the European market. And also we were looking at maybe expanding the business not only into advisory, but also which we see aligns very well with the advisory business is the data industry. And so we want to also expand our business model into new territories. So that's why we have these 2 deals in our pipeline, which we think are very interesting and very suitable for CLG and for their growth story. So the first one is a strategy advisory firm. We call it Project Lagos. And it's a South Africa focused advisory firm, and they're focusing on market entry. They're a strategic advisory firm and business development, and they're more focused on the automotive and industrial and consumer industry, which means they're also not a direct competitor for Centurion, for CLG, but it's also related to the energy sector and also interesting for CLG maybe to tap into new territory. And they're seeking a strategic investor. And yes, and the other one is, which we already mentioned, the data platform. We call it Project Kigali. And this is like a data bank about large investment projects in Africa, which means they're showing like where are the next biggest projects, for example, where will be a port built in Lagos, for example. And then a company subscribes to them and see, okay, there's going to be a port going to be built in Lagos. So we're a supplier, so we know we can invest into the Nigerian market. And we see especially this is also strong synergies for CLG business in general, but also a very interesting market and a market for the future. We know that data is also a new currency. So we see it's a very complementary to the CLG market, and we want to do the M&A transaction in the Q1 this next year. And yeah, we see high potentials that it can really bring CLG to a new level, and therefore also bring Calvert into a new level and provide a lot of growth. Our next project is we call it Project Nairobi. It's in the renewable sector. And here we are looking on to expand our renewable or investment operation by meeting the global environmental goals. And here we want to tap into the recycling business, but also into the carbon capture and biomass business, which we see is a business with a lot of high growth potential because the demand is growing both in Africa, but also in Europe or the Western world. And which we think here is really interesting. It's actually a quite easy business model, but the high IIR, for example, here in their financial model, the pre-tax of the IIR is 82%. And therefore, we see it's like as a really high margin, really cash generating business with really high profits. And a little bit of background of the company that we're looking about. It's a German-based company, but they're focusing on biomass projects in Africa, especially Tanzania. And they are sourcing, so they have like 3 investment pillars. One of them is like the PET trading, which means they're sourcing recycled plastics, like from little water bottles or other drinks, and they shred it, and then they export the shredded goods into the European market or other markets, which are using them then now for sustainable products, for sustainable plastics, or reusing them for fabrics, etc. And they already have like fixed contracts, and for them they need a starting capital to ramp up the production. So they're already making a profit, which we can also see in their financial projections, but they need capital to really scale up the business. I think that's right up now one of their main issues. And the other pillar that they have is the biomass. So, for example, in Tanzania, they're converting coconut shells into activated carbon, and they sell it to the mining industry, but also for clean cooking it can be used, which is also a big issue in Africa, which needs to be combated. And they need the investment for setting up a local production, charcoal production. So they want to really set up local content and expand their businesses. And the other production that they have in mind is like a project in Namibia, where they want to use invasive plants to turn into activated charcoal, and they want to export it to the European market for example, for barbecue. But also here, what we see is it has a high potential. It's like the long-term carbon sequestration, which means they can sell the carbon credit. They can dig the charcoal in the ground, and then they can sell the credits, for example, to credit traders in European or the US. And they need the investment to buy into an existing charcoal production. So here it's like a good case to see how we're really looking into cash generating businesses, because here you can see that they're already have generating cash. They just need like the investment to ramp up the production. And in total, they would need 10 million USD for a large strategic minority stake. And here we also see the potential to maybe finance this with debt, because as you can see here, also the financial projections, that it's already generating cash. So we see that there's a good possibility with our network that we can also can do the investment via debt with the support of financial institutions. And yeah, so when we look the context of the deals, we see also that they have like a good that they're like in a unique place when we look at the competitors. For CLG, for example, we see here we know there are a lot of consulting and advisory firms, but we see as CLG's really specialty is that it has a strong local presence in Africa. We have like satellite offices across the continent, and we know also small markets really well, and that we have a strong specialization into the energy law sector. And also when we expand our businesses, we see that we can even grow our specialization, but also grow our local presence in Africa with new partners, and also with the data industry, that we can even specialize us more and be even more precise in our advisory. And when we look at our project Nairobi, the recycling and charcoal production, which we think is here really interesting, is that when you look at the European market, it's already quite established. We have carbon capture already established in Germany. We have already charcoal production. We have PET recycling. But when you look in the African market, a lot of them are still informal and small-scale producers for both sides. And we see with the Project Nairobi that we can be the pioneer in Africa to really ramp up production, to be the first one of a kind to really make it a professional business out of it. And we see that's really a big opportunity in this sector, which has like a high growth potential, and it's also easy scalable into all African countries. But also when we look at other markets like Latin America, Asia, it's easy scalable, this kind of business. And yeah, now you know a little bit more about our deal pipeline and what we are looking for in the future. So we know we're ambitious, but we also are confident that our deals can help us grow. So we're currently at 3 million, but when we proceed with our deal pipeline, we're certain that we can easily reach to 20 million. And of course, if we have like a suitable investor on our side, we're more than confident that we can grow even more. And yeah, I would like to give NJ the last words to closing remarks. And yeah, thank you from my side.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And I'm very, very bullish about the future. And we are hopeful that we can get investors that are willing to work with us. But it's not like what Jessica said, it's not just about money, but people that want to walk that journey with us and really reinforce capacities and be part of this amazing ride that we think it's going to produce the right kind of return on investments, but also really be able to invest around these ESG principles that we all believe in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, the audience is welcome to post any questions in the chat. So can you elaborate again a bit more on your financing strategies over the coming years? What will be the goals? Will you focus only on equity, or will you also use debt?
I think it's a little bit of both. You would have to look at equity, which is really needed for a lot of like huge scale capital growth. I think part of it is that there's going to be a lot of acquisitions. But again, for most of the acquisitions, you would have to need debt, because debt would be able to help show you up some acquisitions. Then equity could come to back it up with more growth that you would need in the markets. I think part of it is also with the growth strategies is you look at what has been able you've been able to accomplish very well in other emerging markets, be it China, be it in Indonesia, be it Malaysia, and even in some scales Europe. And you just say, why do you have these small patches across Africa, for example, when you could really do an acquisition strategy in merging them? That's why we brought in the on-demand strategy that is really going to drive at least 200 to 300 professional service advisors, and then challenging the big markets, but also give the big clients like DHL or Exxon or some of the big multinational corporations a chance to really scale up with us.
And you have an interesting setup where you invest in Africa, but it's a German listed company. So will you focus on a European investor or also on Asian or African investors?
I think European investors, because of some of the principles that we think that are really important around ESG, that is a part of the play. We also providing some services in Europe, which we think it's going to have to be scalable. Because I like to mention DHL as a client. You take what the work you're doing with DHL globally. Now they're asking to expand and do it in different markets. So yes, Africa has been our base. We're deeply rooted within this emerging market, but also we're not limited by it, because when we look at what you do with a lot of stuff that we do, we've seen cross sections of work where we advising on work and doing a lot of work in Texas, in Canada, and now even within Germany. So there is chance to really scale, but we're looking at where you're going to be able to really move a lot of this project. But with some of the sister companies that we also own, like we look at Sustain, one of the big things that you're going to see is going to be tech and them being able to really deploy renewables across that. So German technology, European technology, being deployed into these emerging markets where you need big needs. And that is going to be really, really, really important for us.
That sounds good. So you also mentioned in the presentation that you emphasize the importance of synergies within the portfolio. So how do you identify and quantify these synergies during the acquisition or investment process?
I think part of it is that, you look at people and you look at the management structures. And based on those management structures, if you can work with these people and then they go on that same goal. It's not a misstatement when you see us going from investing in Sustain and where you're deploying with Norwegians and deploying renewables across Africa, but also looking at this big data center, as Jessica explained on Project Kigali, and you looking at that group and seeing how their synergy they build together. Because at the end of the day, you want people working together. You want people driving on the same, on that same. And I think that diligence has been what we've really pursued a lot and become very careful with who and what we invest in or the kind of projects we're going to take on. And it has been the backbone of everything we've done.
Okay. So we have just 1 minute left. So maybe you can wrap it up. What should investors look out for and why should they invest now in Calvert International?
I think you're going to see a company that is really growing. You're going to see German, European technology being deployed across Africa. And if you're really going to bet on the future, bet on Calvert and bet on what it's trying to do across Africa, because the potential is really huge, but there is clear need for support around technology and financial growth. And I think that is really going to reshape what we do. But most importantly, our views around ESG, our views around what we take as has been guiding principles that has shaped Europe could really be deployed and made profitable in Africa.
NJ and Jessica, thank you very much. That was a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
Dankeschön.